Hello there, welcome back to a new show. Today I'm going to be talking about two films, both financed in France, both are for international appeal, and both are about fear. First is The Wages of Fear, it's got in the title, fear in the title. And then we have The Immortal story. Now, one is famous and one is not, but both are made by famous directors if you're into filmmakers. I mean, Henri George Clouzot made Wages of Fear. He'd had some success before this, but this was his big film that knocked him into the stratosphere for, international audiences. Then he followed up with Diabolique, which made him huge. And then he never quite, lived up to that. And for international audiences, but he still did a lot of good work. But it was more difficult as time passed. The Immortal story came near the end of Wells's career. It was made for French television, hence I can bring it in France, and it's an adaptation of a story, and it's always been one of my favourite Welsh films. But it is about fear and storytelling and what has been missed and what fear and greed do to you. So both films are about fear and greed, which is why they can be talked about together. One's from the 50s, one's from the 70s. One's when France was doing big productions, international productions, to try and show off their filmmaking skills after the war, to bring back an international audience for what they could produce. And the Immortal story is pretty much when France had pretty much understood where it stood in the filmmaking peg, which is they make their own films for their own audience, and some of them cross over, most of them don't. You make them at a certain budget, and that's fine. So they're from different periods. So I'll start with Wages of Fear. This is in a lovely new 4K edition from BFI. There's some nice extras on this, all about the making of the film and various theories in the film. These are, the thing is, when we talk about films that are old enough that all the cast are long dead and it's French, you get a lot of critics talking about their views on what the film's about rather than behind the scenes interviews, really. So if you're into that, you'll enjoy the extras in this. But what I always go for now is the films. The extras are nice, but the film itself is a big thing. That's the selling point. That's going to make me buy or not buy something, not the extras. So the film has been remade. It's been remade by William Friedkin's Sorcerer, which is an excellent remake. Different from the original in some ways very loyal, but it has a different feel to it. It is a very 70s American film. And then you have the new Netflix action version, which was generally hated by everybody, that I know of. Everyone hated Wages of Fear. I didn't mind it, actually, because I knew it was a bastardized version or something, and I always had the original to look at, and I had Saucer to look at. So it didn't really bother me. It was just a big stupid action movie that wasn't a patch on what they'd done before. So I was like, I can enjoy the stupid action movie, and that's it. And it's not going to compete with me for for the affection of the original, because it tries to avoid everything that's good about the original, and just it's a very loose adaptation. I wish they hadn't called it Wages of Fear. I think they just said they're adapting Wages of Fear and it's this title. It would have received badly, but still better than what it is, because now it looks to try to be a remake that doesn't really work. So that's that thing. So back to the original. The Wages of Fear, the first half of the film is actually set in this town where a lot of people in South America, a lot of people go as a hiding out from the past. There's a suggestion a lot of the people there are criminals on the run, and this is the last stop on their life. Really, this is it. This is where they're going to end up. This is their final destination, really. But they all have the kind of drive to get out, even though when you get there, you have no money. It's that actually affording a ticket out of there again is almost impossible because there is a local oil field, but they will not hire people who have a criminal past, who cannot pass the tests. And also the work there is dangerous and it's going to kill you as well. So it's not as even kind of getting a job there is not going to really help you much. And a lot of the people hang around here that we stay with are all kind of scummy. Our lead character Mario is a scumbag. He's awful. I mean, he's like he only does well for himself during the actual mission he's on, when the survival instinct takes over and he becomes inventive. The first half of the film, he has no loyalty. He uses people, and you pretty much know he was a criminal in France, and he's on the run from France, and he's trying to get out from this place he's gone to and in South America, and it's just a hellhole. There's nowhere to go for him. And he's friends with these other guys who are also barely surviving. He's having an affair with one of the women who worked in the bar, and she's also been kind of abused by her boss. She's played by the wife of the director, but he treats her terribly. He's leached on to that guy called Luigi. Yeah, this is Mario and Luigi. For Mario Brothers fans, yep. And the funny thing is, the guy who plays Luigi looks like Mario from the game. And we so basically this guy Mario leeches off this Luigi guy. He shares a house with him, but Luigi is the one who's actually working in the mines and making money and on the oil field, and he's making money and he's saving his money up. And into the town comes this older gangster who has run out of luck, but everyone, because he's dressed well, everyone thinks he must know something, he must be on the up. So Mario attaches himself to it and tosses Luigi aside, tosses his girlfriend aside, and for the first half of it, it's these two guys hanging around, and you get an examination of the power and dynamics in hell. Where basically there's not much money, there's not much power, and all these people are attached themselves to other people to get what power there is to get that. And it's all very fragile, and it's kind of a look at the human nature as it is, as it exists when things are bad. Not the idealistic view of human nature you get in Hollywood films. This is like the more realistic view of people being selfish, self-interested. I mean, some of them aren't out to hurt other people, and some of them are, but it's a case of, I'm not going to cross the street to help you. It's like you just have to survive on your own, and it's brilliant because of that. It's just this nasty, misanthropic look at human nature. Everybody gets it. Everybody is viewed as a fool. Even the idealistic barmaid is viewed as foolish because she believes in stuff, but it might not be to her own advantage to survive here. But there is a sense at times where there is some characters who understand to try and enjoy life. But Mario and his new pal don't enjoy life. They enjoy power. That's what gets them up in the mornings, power. Even when they're in a perilous situation, they're still trying to put themselves to power. But they both want out. They both want out of this area, even to get like a transport to somewhere else where they can maybe build a little bit. And so you spend the first hour of the film building up their desperation, just seeing them in their elements, seeing how they, and getting signs that this older gangster talks a good talk, but maybe he's not as great as he says he is. And then there's an oil rig explosion in this area. Like it's a local oil refinery. There's an explosion, and they have to get nitroglycerine to put it out. But the problem is the road's very rough, and nitroglycerine is not at the location because it's too dangerous to have at the oil field. And so it's at the area where the offices are, which is miles away. So they have to travel through these awful roads. And there's nitroglycerine that, if it shakes too much, it can blow up and kill you. So it's very dangerous. nobody sane would drive these trucks because you could easily die, and you've got lots of bad roads between the offices and the refinery. So they decide they're not going to risk their men. What they're going to do is risk these losers who are off hanging around the town. So they decide to find out who are the best drivers, and offer them money. You'll get like £3,000. And that time's money, which is a lot of money, would get them out of there. Would give them a chance to start afresh somewhere. So there's 2 trucks, 2 drivers for each truck, so they can rotate the driver so no one is driving tired. And they choose the 4 best drivers. And the guy who's the older guy isn't really a driver, so he threatened the other guy who is a driver so he can get the final spot because he wants out. And then as the driving goes on, Luigi's also one of the drivers. There's also this German who's very calm and collected. And the second half of the film, or second basically hour and a half of the film, is them driving from one place to the other, where there's lots of roadblocks, there's lots of problems, these trucks do not rotate well, and the older guy is slowly falling apart. He's just slowly losing his mind. The fear of what could happen this next glycerine. He's not as collected as he thinks he is, and Mario starts to see that he's maybe not the guy full of opportunity that he originally thought. But as this film goes on, you see what these people are made of. You see how Luigi, who is dying basically, but he wants out of this area before he dies because he's got all this stuff in his lungs. He needs out. If he gets out of there with this thing, he can maybe get some medical thing to help him. But he needs out of that area. If he continues working in the oil fields, he will die in 6 months. And so everyone's got motivation to get out, and it's just them slowly pushing forward, going through this awful ordeal. And Clouzot milks it for all it's worth. This is just a wonderful film for suspense, because they do the basic thing you need to do, is you get invested in the characters. Doesn't mean you have to like the characters, you're just invested in what their story is. That's the big thing that Hollywood gets wrong, is like a lot of the time it's like you don't have to like people. If you're interested, they can be complicated and difficult, but you can still enjoy the journey and go with them on a journey. In this case, you're with these 4 guys. The nicest one's Luigi, the worst one's the older gangster, and it's just watching them either rise to the occasion or collapse, and watching them, the variety of reactions, and just how fate can be cruel, and how difficult the situation can be, and how inventive they can be, and how difficult it is to fight against nature when you have very few resources and you've got to get a job done. And it's a wonderful film. It's just great. The whole film just delivers. I'm not going to describe all the things that happen in the second half of the film in case you haven't seen it, but I'm sure if you're watching this video you've seen it. It's just the accumulation of what fear does to people, which is the important thing. That's the thing that really drives it. And what people do under fear, and what the facade is, and what age does to you, because the older gangster loses out early on to be one of the truckers, because the guy who he knows, a guy who's running the office for the mines, or for the oil rig thing, because they used to know each other in past lives. But he says, you're too old for this. You won't survive it. The stress will kill you. And he manipulates himself into the situation. And then as the film goes on, the guy's prophecy is proven right. He's like, this is too much for the guy. He cannot take it. It is a young man's journey. It's like, if you're older and you can imagine things too much, it's going to destroy you. You need to keep pushing ahead. And there's all that sense of characterization. What are people doing it for? And what they're doing it for is to get out of this hellhole. because living in this hellhole has been set up so well that you know it's a living death. You know, people commit suicide in this area. It's like it's this thing of there's just nothing here. There's no support. There's nothing. You're basically begging for anything to survive on, and it becomes this thing about human nature at its worst, but also what people do to survive. And it's a wonderful film, and it's just this sense of what fear does to people. Had it sharpened you, or did it make you go crazy? And there's always a suspense in this film of just how cruel life can be and how difficult what should be a simple task if you look at it, and what would be in a film like a mainstream film when it was this easy task and round a tight corner, that if you see most films they make it seem easy. If you actually treat it realistically and you've got nitroglycerin in the back of the truck that's trying to turn the corner, you can go in for 10-15 minutes of a suspense sequence and really ratchet it up. And if you've got a couple of bits of wood that are rotten, it becomes really difficult for the truck. And it's like all those little things, like what happens if you get one of the tanks or one of the oil pipes bursts on the road where you're driving. It's like all these little things that pile up and cause real problems. And it's just the build and build, and it's also the way it's paced, so it never gives you a break because it understands that always messing around with your sense of comfort. So things never happen exactly the way you'd think they'd happen, so you're always looking at every little detail of what could possibly happen, just like the characters are doing. And the director sets up so well for what's going on within their heads. So Wages of Fear is just a wonderful film. It just is about capitalism in the backwater of no one cares, no one has any human rights. This is the kind of hellhole that, you know, a lot of like multinationals would love to have and probably do have in really kind of difficult countries. You know, it's probably describing the conditions in like South America or Africa at the moment really well, like before people had their chances to, you know, unionize and things, which is why, you know, America supported all those dictators who hated unions and things and workers' rights in South America in the 50s and 60s, and why there was a rise of communism in the 1960s and 50s, because people were seeing the human rights abuses going on by these companies and how they were abusing them. And this film's about that. So it's political, but it's also just a look at human nature. So Wages of Fear is wonderful, but it's an experience. I watched a projector. It's a great experiential film. Just the sense of the atmosphere and the build of things. It's a film you should try and see on the biggest screen as possible. Now I'm going to go into the Immortal story, which is about a different kind of fear. Wages of Fear is about the fear when you're poor of trying to survive, basic survival. The Immortal story is the fear of dying when you're rich, when you've achieved things. It's pretty much the guy who would get rich off all these deals. What happens to them? In this case, the case of this guy is envious of the stories of the workers and the people who are have to struggle for their survival. The guy who makes the money off them and pays them very little is envious of them because they had a life, and he's been in this paranoid state of keeping his money and keeping himself secure and testing his own people and just simply existing in wealth. And Orson Welles plays the man, directs the film, and essentially it's about this guy who has heard a story which has gone around various ports from various sailors about a guy falling in love with a woman over one night who's the mistress of a rich man, and what happens there. And Wells's character wants this story to actually happen because he finds out that it's never actually happened. It's a dream of a story. It's something about what the poor dream of the rich, of what could happen in a life of luxury, and it's about moving people who have difficult lives into a fiction of your own making. So it's a fantasy based on having the wealth and having the imagination, but fearing it as well, fearing where you are, fearing what you've become, and fearing other people essentially. So you have to actually make them behave the way you want them to because you've got money. So Joan Moreau plays the mistress character. She's not the mistress of Orson Welles. She used to play that part. She plays a woman who came from wealth, whose family is now not in the best condition, and she does not like Welles at all for all the things he's done in the past that have caused some of her problems. But he's offering her money to play out this scenario, this one night, for him so he can see it actually happen in real life. Even though it's a fiction. It's not actors creating something as a fiction. That this feels as something we've existed in just now in reality, with people who are watching films or watching like dramas, think the actors are those characters. I mean, I know they're actually playing characters. There may be parts of them in that character, but it's not the full story. And it's like a lot of people, you see a lot of people who are confuse the person for the part they're playing and want that person to be real. They want the story they're telling to have some sort of base in reality. They've attached it to their own mythology. If you look at Star Trek fans, Star Wars fans, Harry Potter fans, Lord of the Rings fans, some of them are fine, some of them are normal. There are some that take it too far and take it as an offence if you take away the lore or change something, or it's almost like this is a real person. How can you change this or change that? And it's like, and we all fall into that when someone does a sequel that absolutely demolishes what came before. Yeah, we're all falling into that. But this is like the extreme version of it. You can see a certain psychology of people, and it's always people who either don't have anything and it's their way of surviving, or have too much time in their hands and too much time to think about this stuff, and not actually engage on the difficulties of life. They'd rather engage in the difficulties of fantasy. In the same way in Wages of Fear, these guys are having a fantasy of thinking they're kings of this hellhole in the beginning, even though it's a total hellhole and they're not kings at all. It's the fantasy that keeps them going. It's a fantasy that brings them to some sort of ease with their lives and the way it's gone. But it's not reality. So in this case, Wells wants this reality thing to happen. He's got a guy who works for him who's going to set it all up. They find a sailor who's not that interested in it, but he'd like the money. But he's doing it for his own reasons, and everyone's the big trick is everyone's doing it for their own reasons. And the guy setting it up for Wells has his own reasons for doing it, and he's not particularly enamored with Wells' character. Wells' character kind of knows he's setting himself up for a bad ending by doing this, but he's so ill and old and depressed and can find no joy in life that this self-indulgence is the only thing he's really got, even though it's a poison chalice, really. Just as having a kind of attachment to fiction that's unhealthy is also a poison chalice. You know, it's something that the modern world has to figure out. And it's not just about films and things, it's about celebrities as well. It's like, or it's about religion, this idea of this perfect thing that's going to make our lives better in some way, rather than facing the brutal reality of your life and how horrible it can be at times. But in this case, it's a guy who seems to have nothing to worry about, but he still has those doubts, because human beings have those doubts. Human being minds just go and go and go. And this guy is always just unimaginative but cruel and focused on his own wealth and his own well-being. But even he is attached to this weird image and this making the story happen. So it's about the fiction, about the madness of fiction. And Wells was in love with fiction, but I think this film shows that he was very well aware of how destructive it is. And I mean, it was destructive to his life. I mean, he went around the world trying to create fictions, and his own persona was a fiction. You know, everyone thought Orson Welles was a guy, and he obviously wasn't. He was obviously a more troubled guy than you'd guess. And also a lot more charming than anyone else, but there was also you can see it was a facade. So you do get a feeling he's kind of commenting on himself a little bit, like this idea of this fiction, this guy trying to create a fiction when he sees himself as a fiction in some ways. Like, well, the character creating the film about it is a fiction, and there's layers and layers of the onion, and the kind of general confusion of what you want from fiction and what you want from people, and how people, you don't want to look too closely if you're attached to the fiction. And it's about the painful side of fiction, the painful side of fear, of reality. And that's what the film's about. And it's beautiful. I've always loved this film. It's always been a favourite of mine because of that idea of a guy commenting on something he's guilty of. You know, Wells is obviously guilty of this. You look at Citizen Kane and all his characters have created this fiction of Kane, and it's a lie, and it's something that separates him from the rest of the world. And it continues throughout his films. There's just this sense of someone who... The way Wells always try to play kings is a way to avoid being normal. That's obviously a chronic shyness in some way, or a chronic distance himself from some way from whatever his problems actually were with people. And there's just this whole thing on in this film of how twisted his mind is, and it's about that kind of weird twistedness, not just kind of distraction by real life, and how hard to control it is, and how people are plotting their own way, and the various plots against Wells in the film by his advisor is also a different kind of fiction, as if that will help this guy, if he has his own reasons for doing it, as if that's going to help him long term either. It's just fiction within fiction, and everyone's kind of damned by the addiction to the one version of fiction. Like John Monroe's character, the idea of doing this is going to help her in any way. Really, it may help her for a few days financially, and trying to look back on it and fictionalise her own head, but it's still a fiction. And the whole idea of love, like if you create an idea of love for yourself, is it reality or is it fiction? So there's lots of great stuff in this film, and like Wages of Fear, it does feel pitiless about our addiction to our own ways of survival, either being poor and trying to survive, or in this case being rich and trying to survive. I know you're kind of doomed anyway. So these damn French, they're doomed. So, they love Wells because Wells is depressive. So these are two wonderful films. I'd recommend them. This one's just out. The Wages of Fear is not long out. You get a nice 4K. This one, The Immortal Story, I'm sure you can find it. It's Mr. Bongo. I got it years ago, but I think there's other versions available if you are inventive of the way you look. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I recommend both films. I'll see you later.